parallel to the journey what our country itself has traveled. Almost 50 years, 55 years, the old act was there, and the needs at that time were different. And the current generation where we are residing, there is a different scope for the commercial activities per se as such. And it was a long pending act, and at last it got passed. Last week only there was a national convention of the practicing company secretaries, whereby eminent personality from the ministry, Mr. Bhandari, was there, and he just made a very casual remark that when people were company secretaries were after his life, you do this change, that is required, this is required, there are so many problems and all that. So he gave a very clear-cut outview on the part of the government as such. We don't expect government to be lenient on any professionals, and just because as a professional you were sleeping and the corporates were sleeping, that doesn't mean now we are going to come and help you. So with that little caveat, I will just take you further. Basically, you see the Companies Act 2013 is a remarkable piece of legislation in itself, because it doesn't speak only about the Companies Act as was done under the Companies Act 1956. Basically, under the Companies Act 2013, if you have to read it and understand it and work under it, Companies Act is the one area, second is the Information Technology Act, third is we should know our business. If I am a company secretary in any company, to understand what 188 is all about, what is ordinary course, arm's length, there is no formula for it, right? So how can I understand it? I should know my business. How can I decide what is ordinary course and arm's length? Just sharing a small thought over it. So basically you see these are the key features of the Companies Act 2013, the key points, how it differs from the old act and why this piece of legislation comes. With that, these are the presentation index today. These are the areas what we are going to discuss. Basically, what are the very brief new concepts under the Companies Act 2013, top 7 actions which are required by the corporates to be done on an immediate basis. What are the agenda items to be taken for the forthcoming ensuing AGM, as we are already in the season of meetings. In our country, monsoon equivalent to the AGM. So today rain has also started, and by now I think some of the companies have also started. So I think we all as professionals will have to be ready with that. Then what are the major actions to be taken apart from the AGM? There may be some procedural requirement. Then I have tried to frame some of the questions and tried to answer it. And certain feedback I had taken also from yesterday evening on the Institute of Company Secretaries of India has came out with its own ethic. So I thought I will cover that. It will give you some highlights over it. Then some selected forms I have tried to capture, and what are the basic timelines and the deadlines for the compliance there too. Then comes the most important aspect according to me, the policies and the codes which are required to be adopted under the Companies Act. We all know that certain code relating to independent director is to be adopted and so. But I don't think in public domain there is much thought governing section 134 subsection 5 basically relating to director's responsibility statement per se dealing with internal controls. If we go by the explanation there too, there is a requirement of a policy and procedures to be adopted. So how to go about it? Then what are the resolutions where 100% approval or the consent of the board is required? What are the items where 100% approvals of the members is required, then only those business can be transacted? What are the resolutions of the items wherein special notice is required under the Companies Act 2013? Then comes other set of approvals whereby apart from the directors and shareholders, what are the other approvals required to transact those business? And certain synopsis I have done for the overall compliance required under the Companies Act 2013. Now we see the Companies Act 2013 has thrown open a Pandora box relating to certain new items, certain novel concept has come. First and foremost, secretarial audit is there. Second is the CSR is there. Then the whole concept of meetings now has gone under change. Now the board meetings can be done through video conferencing. On the other hand, the shareholders meeting, we have a postal ballot concept and e-voting, though those has been deferred by MCA till December. Another new aspect relating to the managerial, earlier act we were only aware about directors per se, but now recognizing the changing times, apart from director we are one level below them, the key managerial personnel, basically the whole-time directors, managing directors, chief financial officers and company secretaries per se. Then transaction related provisions, related party, 185 code section 295 loans to directors, intercorporate loans 372 under the old act, new section 186 basically has gone a fundamental change whereby it's not only corporate to corporate but company giving it to anyone, those transactions we are getting covered into it, and codes and policies. And the most important is under the Companies Act 2013 the concept of the duties of the directors now is statutory enumerated under the act itself. So whether we are auditors or whether we are company secretaries, during our course of audit there will be times where we will have to cross and see whether director is in essential doing his duties or not. And we will have to guide as consultants also to the directors how certain things will be required to be monetized, if certain policies have to be taken. I will give you a very small example. It's very common to find big groups whereby XYZ Limited is there, and other hand you will have the parallel activities of the promoters per se, their own business they will be doing in their own capacity of shareholders and all that. And there may be at times when both the business line are similar, maybe a real estate for example. Let's say we have an entity of DLF, where public shareholders are there, it is a listed entity. On the other hand, Mr. KP Singh would also have some is private business. So if some business opportunity is coming, how it should be dealt with? Because now conflict of interest itself is a penalty or a crime you can see under the Companies Act 2013. Now let's see what are the top 7 actions which are required to be done immediate basis by all the companies in case it is not been done. First and the foremost deals with the corporate structure. Second, the duties of the directors, which is very fundamental. Independent directors, their whole criteria for appointment has gone a seesaw change. That now if you are an independent director applicable to listed companies, there is a cap of 7 directorship. That thing is also there. Audit committee, the role of audit committee, its charter has gone a fundamental change. CSR, very vital point, internal controls under the Companies Act 2013. And related party transactions. Though in the last session in detail, I think at micro level, related party transaction has been dealt, if I am not mistaken. So if certain aspect I am touching with your liberty, you can just guide me, so I will just list it out. But there are other aspects also related party, like what are the steps to be taken? How to identify the party? How to establish a process within an organization? As it should be very robust and dynamic with changing times also, you can just have a system in place and it will take care of your related party transactions. Now as we see, the Companies Act 2013 relating to the corporate structure has gone a seesaw change. Let's take a classic example of a very fundamental section like 185, parallel section of the old 295, 186 and 188. These are the main 3 sections along with the deposits which are giving the maximum pinch to all the corporates. How it has affected the private limited companies are also within the ambit. No doubt the government has came out with its own draft for changes in the law for the public comments. But till the time it gets through, we have to live with it. So this is a very big change, like for giving loans. Now we cannot give in case of a private limited company. Change of rate of interest is there. 2 sections to different rate of interest we have to do. 185 talks about the bank rate, on the other hand 186 talks about the government yield. So whenever we are having that system whereby most often you see if a transaction is getting hit under 185, it will be getting covered up also under 186. So how you will comply with the rate of interest? There will be certain differences in that. So as a thumb rule, the more stricter the provision you have to go by it, and the maximum rate which is there you have to go by it. The Act provides that the company will not make investment in more than 2 layers of subsidiaries. Investment subsidiaries, that is basically not the normal business operating subsidiaries, but investment subsidiaries. And no transition period is given for that. So how to change that? So henceforward, whatever structuring we are doing, we have to keep in mind this provision. Evaluating the group structure as whole and how to fund future things. Especially if you see industries like real estate, construction and large groups like Mahindra & Mahindra, Tata Steel, Reliance, etc. would be falling under it. No doubt there will be small entities also, small business groups which is having, let's say 10 companies, 15 companies, if they are having that structure for the future expansion, they would also be getting affected by it. Now you see, in very brief, I will just touch the duties of the directors and why we are talking about it. And what is the fundamental change? Under the Companies Act 1956, there was a concept of fiduciary duties of the director. Even if the director was engaging in conflicting business, he was not doing any crime under the Companies Act 2014, and he was very well allowed to do, in other words, to do it until and unless you go to the CLP under the provision of the erstwhile 397, 398 or 250 of the Companies Act 1956 or the 409, certain 4 or 5 sections were there. Others selected group of shareholders could have gone over there and seek the remedy there. But as the Companies Act 2013, it changes that. You can see a very small example that now a director will have to act in a good faith to promote objectives to the benefit of the members. Again, you see the entire language is very subjective in nature. What is a good faith? Who will decide good faith? Again, it's a very subjective thing. So there may be various transactions which are happening that has to be monetized in a proper way. The directors as a whole, if they think if there is a transaction, let's say, which may be coming under 188 related party. So whether per se you may be within your limits under the law to do a 188, but whether you are complying with this section relating to duties of directors. So whole Companies Act 2013, you see now it's no longer very easy. One section we are just looking at in doing our compliance, but it's a very hybrid sort of thing where we have to do reading of 2 or 3 sections and then come to a conclusion. Again, you see a director will not involve in a situation where we have a direct or indirect interest or conflict or possibly conflict with the interest of the company, indulging in competitive business. A director shall exercise his duties with due and reasonable care, skill and diligence, and shall exercise independent judgment. Now, why is this slide very important? Let's take, we are very familiar in most of the groups, it's not that the promoters per se are directors in main holding company, subsidiary and associates. You will be having set of professionals, let's say a company secretary or a chief financial officer or a top person from a marketing field or any other having a good standing in the company with certain responsibility towards its function. Now let's say he has been appointed, a person is in the roles of the holding company and he has been also appointed a director in the subsidiary company. And when he is in the board of the subsidiary, he has to ensure that he is not doing any way whereby he is acting according to the instructions of the holding company. Let's suppose there will be a CFO of a holding company writing a mail to a person who is a director, sending him the agenda and sending this is the criteria for this transaction XYZ has to be done and X amount of money is required for certain funding purpose. So in that case, do we think that director of a subsidiary company who is in the payroll is doing his duty in a proper way? So what is the takeaway from this? Drafting of emails, we have to be very careful with what type of languages we are using, how we are recording it in the minutes, are there any disclosure or caveats we are giving in the minutes post-transaction that there was a certain amount of discussion and the director per se in question has given his opinion that whatever discussion or decision he is taking, it's in his independent capacity, though he is also affected with the holding company or associate company per se. So these are certain criteria we will have to take care. A director shall not achieve or attempt to achieve any undue gain, advantage either to himself or his relatives, partners, associates, and if such director is found guilty of making any, and he shall be liable for the amount which is equivalent to that gain. So just see what is the maximum penalty, or in other words, director will have to suffer. Now, monetizing is going to be a big aspect under the Companies Act 2013. No doubt company secretaries will be drafting, but I am very sure as an auditor fraternity, when you will be looking at very keenly whether certain items have been transacted, whether they have been monetized, or how director has achieved this duty. If certain business item was done, how in his board meeting, what was his role? So all these items are very important. Now let's very briefly visit the criteria of independent directors per se. The Act has provided maximum tenure of an independent director as 2 consecutive terms of 5 years, with past period not being counted. We are very well aware. But under the revised clause 49 which is coming, past tenure is to be considered for maximum of 5 years and it has to be complied from October 1st, 2014. Thus, an individual is already serving as an independent director prior to the act coming of the listing changes in the listing agreement. This date shall be eligible for only one term of appointment. So that 5 plus 5 will not be there because he is already doing one term. Only that one term will have to be taken. But under the Companies Act, it gives you 2 years, 2 terms, that is basically 5 plus 5. So this does not create an immediate impact as such, but the companies and the groups per se will have to be ready with a set of independent directors for the future appointments. And no doubt under the revised clause 49 now, a director cannot be an independent director in more than 7 companies. So that itself is going to be a challenge. Now audit committee. No doubt under the Companies Act, the items which require in the charter of the audit committee has gone a seesaw change. But rather than going into specific each item by item, these 5 to 6 items I thought are very important. And review and monitor auditors' independence and performance and effectiveness of the audit process. Approval or modification of related party transactions, scrutiny of inter-corporate loans and investment. Valuation of assets, evaluating internal financial controls and risk management systems. And 6th, the new concept which has come, we can say, which is taken from the listing agreement, concept of vigilance mechanism or risk management or whistleblower. Whatever words we use, it's more or less the same. Now, another new concept which has come is the concept of CSR. If you are meeting certain threshold limits which are given in the section 135, you are required to form a committee there too. And that committee's charter will have to adopt in doing all those activities pertaining to CSR. So biggest call here as a company we have to take is whether the company wants to do that activities per se itself, or through any third entities you are allowed to do that. Basically, to put it very politely, you are allowed to outsource your CSR activities. So that call the company would have to make. Now internal control. Section 134 basically dealing with director's responsibility statement. Why this is vital? Because it's very subjective and it doesn't talk only about the financial figures or the certain transactions, but how to do a business basically. You see, directors in the board report now need to state if they have laid down internal financial controls to be followed and whether they have proper system to ensure compliance with the provisions of the applicable laws. Now this is a very significant new compliance requirement where requirement of auditor to also design and operate internal financial control. So now you see company per se while designing this, it's very fundamental for the audit committee to take into confidence the statutory auditors, internal auditors, and then designs the mechanism how to go about it. And 1st April onwards this is required to be done and we are already nearing end of the first quarter. For all those entities, this is very vital and we as professionals if there, we should approach to the company and draw their attention this is required and what's the blueprint to go about it. Now you are very briefly have covered RPT, you may just go through that. What are the basic criteria? If it is in the ordinary course, an arm's length audit committee approval. If it is not at ordinary an arm's length, then you require board approval also. If you are crossing certain threshold limits, then you also require shareholders approval. Now, for listed entities, no doubt it has become next to impossible to do RPTs according to me. When I say not only the existing clause 49, but the new listing agreement, many of you might be aware is coming into place. And it's very stringent in nature. It's very subjective. Words used there are very subjective in nature and it's going to be very tough to comply with those provisions. So, how to deal with RPTs basically? First and foremost, at a macro level, we have to evaluate all the RPTs, past transactions, establish the trigger points, prepare necessary documents, record the same in a proper way. Because there would be certain transactions where there were no agreements in place. So agreements would have to be created. Ordinary course arm's length would have to be highlighted and documented. And it's not that when we are dealing with RPT, only we have to look from a horse eye view, but Income Tax Act, you are specialist over here, I don't have to speak much, we have to align with that. Excise law, though there is no concept of RPT, but definition of manufacturer, there will be certain items whether independent or not, all those items you will have to take care of. Now, let's go to the next part of the presentation. What are the items required to be taken at the ensuing annual general meeting of the company? 293 of the old Act, you would be aware, so it's a similar item, increasing the borrowing limit and creating a charge if you are doing check the existing limits and see what is the future limits required and go for it. Accepting of public deposits, if you are fulfilling the criteria given under the section 73, 74, 76 and you wish to accept deposits, though the conditions are very stringent, yet if you are qualifying for it, you will have to take a shareholder's approval for the same. 186 investment loans and guarantees below the threshold limits. Now what will happen under 186 here, you see, earlier only ICDs were getting covered under 372A, but 186 per se doesn't deal only with ICDs, but it is much broader in concept. So now when you are creating your limits or calculating your limits 1st April onwards, what will happen? Let's suppose you had a limit of 100 crores and let's suppose after 100 crores, 50 or 60 crores limits we are utilized for ICD purpose. So there are very strong possibilities now as other entities are getting covered. Those transactions continue to remain, but those will be getting eaten into your limits. Though you don't require any further compliance for the same. The earlier compliance under the 372 will be there, but it will eat into your limits. So it's very fundamental takeaway to be taken from here that you have to calculate your limits again. Changes in MOA and articles of association is required. Per se, why it is required in MOA, according to me, there are certain liberties which are given under 185, 188, and it will depend business to business and whether are we able to establish any linkage to our main objectives. Then according to me, the main object should be changed and aligned with those provisions. Articles why certain items, if you see under the Companies Act, like example of a bonus issue, you require a permission of the article. So whether your existing articles are having it or not. In case it is not having, you will have to incorporate over there. Concept of e-voting, postal ballot, though they are required if you want certain any items over there whereby plus minuses can be done, you are free to do it. Issuance of security. If further capital is required to be done, then it is required to be taken over. Appointment of KMP, now salary of the KMP you see is required. Earlier if you are appointing a company secretary, in the resolution only his appointment was required. Now his salary will also be there. So whether those salary we are taking or appointment of independent directors and items arising out of other laws. Now immediate actions, what are very key items which we require for implementing it, and let's try to touch it in a very brief way. Identification of related parties, how to do it, constitution of committees, reference of the committees has to be changed, whether it's your shareholders committee, remuneration committee, audit committee, all those committees will now require to change your terms of reference. So are we ready with it? Payment of sitting fees up to 1 lakh. Now directors will obviously want more sitting fees, but whether that thing is there in the articles or not, or still we are getting with the, and the articles clause deals with the old clause only. So if that is the case, if you will have to amend your articles for that. Maintaining register of KMP, this is a new requirement. So let's suppose a scenario you are not required to have a company secretary or a CFO, but you are already having a managing director. So you will have to have a new register as per the new requirement. Reconstitution of the board, new concept of one director has come, no leeway for certain period, a cushion has been provided. So we have to be start ready with that, because time is literally flying. We were talking the Companies Act is coming, and we have already passed first quarter itself. Now you see the secretarial standards relating to the board and the general meeting. Very soon the final rules are coming and it will be notified relating to secretarial audit as such. So that will be required to be filed. A very small example, now 7 days notice is required to be given in advance for a board meeting. 5 days prior to the meeting, minimum agenda has to be circulated. So there are all very small but yet very critical areas, and it will change how we are supposed to work under the Companies Act. Code of conduct for the directors is a new requirement. Certificate of independency from independent director. So again, what are the words to be used in? How we can go to a big person who are there like a Deepak Parikh or Mr. Shaileshwar Hari Bhakti and ask them, I require a certificate from you that you are independent. And I think the toughest job, if I am able to put very lightly, is going to be for the company secretary. And I am very happy that I left employment and now I am in practice. So I will be saved from that embarrassment. Adoption of policies, various policies are required to be done. Then new concept is there whereby return of change in shareholding with ROC has to be reported. Serving and receiving documents electronically, no one is talking about this last point. Now your very requirement to anyone can serve you any notice through an email. You would have given for some marketing purpose somewhere an email. Someone will come at any part of the country and serve you a notice and go to the court. Yes, I have served the notice to this company. So it's very vital to have one email ID and publicize it everywhere. This email ID is only for all the legal notices. For marketing purpose, you may have 10 different IDs. So now let's start with the compliances. What are the major compliances which are required to be done? Otherwise there will be a severe fiasco in the company. First and foremost, now no leave of absence concept. If a director is not attending at least one meeting during the 12 months, he will automatically vacate the office. So the leave of absence is no longer leave of absence, but it will be leave of vacation as such. Filing of certain boards resolutions with ROC. Earlier it was not there. Filing of report of annual general meeting, this is a new concept, and in detail we will be discussing it. What is the form, how we have to file, and what is the time duration. Now, I don't know, but somehow I am so connected to this section. Wherever I go, even though it is not in my slide, I try to cover it. I don't know what is the connection with this. It's basically dealing with 134 subsection 5, internal financial controls. Now you see it says that the directors in the case of a listed company had laid down internal financial controls to be followed by the company, and that such financial controls are adequate and were operating effectively. This is very good, no problem. But you see the explanation what is given parallelly to that. The term internal financial control means the policies and procedures adopted by the company for ensuring the ordinary and efficient conduct of its business. Just full stop over there. So subjective in nature. So does it cover business decisions, normal business decisions also? Any shareholder can question that. The definition you see then says that including adherence to company's policies, the safeguarding of assets and other items mostly relating to internal control. So the word over there which is going to be a very important ordinary and efficient conduct of its business, and just prior to that in the second line you see the policies and procedures adopted by the company. So what are those policies and procedures? Act doesn't define that. The company itself will have to come out with its own policies and procedures for this. So this is very few companies have actually documented it. This is the policy in compliance with this section. Transactions with auditors and KMP to be appointed. There are certain restrictions for auditors appointment now. If certain auditor is holding shares in the company, certain transactions has been done. So all that has to be taken care of. Now, I have tried to form certain questions and try to answer it, which I think would help you. Now let's take a scenario whereby a private company is having a paid up share capital of 45 lakhs and turnover of 20 crores as per the last audited balance sheet. Will it be treated as a small company or not? You see, the such company will be treated because the word or is written, and in other words the company fulfilling anyone's conditions of either turnover of 2 crores, less than 2 crores, or paid up capital of less than 50 lakhs will be getting fit in the definition of a small company and will be eligible for these exemptions for the small companies. Now whether every company, this is the most everyone is talking about, whether the company secretary or the corporate, whether the company is required to amend its articles under the new Companies Act 2011. What is the answer to it? Answer cannot be yes or no. Basically, if there are certain items which require compliance or you want to take benefit of it, or an act somewhere it is said that you can do this if articles allows you to do that, you will have to amend your articles in order to claim benefit of it. Now, whether it is not necessary but suggested that whenever a company amends, it should ensure that subsequent amendment is as per the format specified in the Companies Act 2013. Since certain provisions you see of the Companies Act require specific clauses to carry out like a bonus share, we have to alter it as per the new requirement. So it's all basically you see it will boil down whether you want to take that benefit. It's not that certain non-violation, you are violating something, but if you want to take benefit out of it, you will have to do it. Now let's see. This is a very whether duplicate share certificate, whether committee can be delegated that power. We know before share certificate only board can do as per the new act. Whether for the duplicate share certificates committee can be done or not. You can do it because the general circular of the NCA dated 19th of 2014 says that